Last weekend, some of the best Brawl Stars teams from all across the world flew into Brazil to compete for the last 4 World Final spots, and I am going to be telling you guys all of the most important lessons that I learned from watching this entire tournament. This was the most important Brawl Stars tournament of 2025 so far, so we had some of the best players and the best drafters in the entire community there, showing us what the best picks and strategies are. So today I'm going to be showing you guys all the most important lessons that I took away from watching this gameplay, but if you want more content like this in the future, please be sure to let me know by leaving a comment and a like down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, but without further ado, let's get straight into the video. Alright guys, first off, I wanted to look through the most banned and picked brawlers to give you guys a good feel for which of the brawlers are currently at the top of the meta. This should come as no surprise to you guys, but by far the most banned brawler throughout the entire tournament was Mina. She was banned in over 40% of games, and the only time that she was picked, it was a free win. Obviously, if you guys have been playing the game recently, you probably have a pretty good idea of how broken Mina is. As Supercell's most recent broken assassin, she is obviously going to be kind of a free win in the meta right now, so if you have her and you can play her, definitely abuse that brawler. But more often than not, she is going to be banned out, so you have to keep that in the back of your mind. The second and third most banned out brawlers were actually Kit and Ollie, who both have very broken hypercharges. They both have game-changing abilities. So the main thing that makes these brawlers so overpowered is that you can single-handedly win a game for your team, even if you've been dominated the entire time. As long as you can charge up that purple button, you're going to be able to make a play to win. Ollie especially is easily one of the most broken brawlers that we saw being picked and banned a ton throughout the competition. But in pretty much any game mode outside of Knockout, you're almost guaranteed to Ollie hypercharge, and that can just single-handedly win you the game, even if your team did not deserve it. It can definitely make for some frustrating moments, but if it's on your team, you're going to be happy about it. Ollie is especially very broken because of the way that he synergizes with some of our healing brawlers that we will get into later in the video. But moving on in our top 5 most banned brawlers, number 4 and 5 were Cordelius and Kaze. These brawlers are both very important in the meta, but they do serve pretty different roles. Obviously, Cordelius is in the game as like your strongest anti-tank brawler, but I would say one of the main things that Cordelius is really good for in this meta is using his super to basically cancel out the opponent's hypercharge. If your opponent is running like an Ollie, Shade, Draco, some of those brawlers with the broken purple buttons, and they pop that, you can just put them into your Cordelius realm and then kind of just waste their entire duration. So that is the way that we saw Cordelius being brought out the most. He is definitely a very strong early pick. You can pretty much run him into any comp, but he's definitely going to be a lot stronger if the other team already has one aggro or tank on their comp. Moving into Kaze, she seems to be the strongest assassin slash movement brawler outside of course, Mina, who we've already discussed. Kaze is a very high skill cap brawler, but she's got so much movement ability. She's got the invisibility gadgets. Kaze is definitely a good example of that pop-off brawler that we saw getting picked pretty early in every single game mode. So if you are a mechanically gifted player, Kaze is easily one of the best brawlers for you to get good at. That's gonna do it for our top 5 most banned brawlers. Now we're gonna look at our top 5 most picked brawlers, and starting off with number 1, we have a pretty big surprise for me. Jae was our most picked brawler throughout 3 days of LCQ competition. He was actually drafted in over 40% of matches in the entire 3 days of the tournament. So we pretty much had a Jae in half of the games, and he actually had a 58.5% win rate too, which is honestly off the charts for a brawler who was picked as often as Jae. I feel like that pick rate with that win rate kind of just proves that he is an absolute menace in Brawl Stars right now. He's got the speed, he's got the heal, he's got the damage, so he has pretty much unlimited versatility. And because of that versatility, he can be a first pick or a middle round pick on pretty much any single game mode, any single map. There's really no limit to where you can go Jae. Because of his speed and heal capabilities too, he also synergizes extremely well with some of the more broken aggros in the game. Obviously, we talked about Ollie earlier, but you can go Jae with Ollie, you can go Jae with Hank, you can go Jae with Buster or Kenji, pretty much any of these brawlers, and Jae is just gonna give you an absolute buff. You're gonna be able to get so much more movement speed, so much more heals. You're gonna be able to cycle your hypercharges a lot quicker if you have a Jae teammate. So I think that does make Jae the ultimate synergy brawler right now. It's very difficult to find a combination that doesn't work with Jae. Although this next brawler was not in the top 5 most picked, I did want to cover him right now just because he has a lot of similarities with Jae, but we're gonna be talking about Byron. Obviously, Byron is your other like long range healer that we have in the game right now. Once again, fantastic brawler to pair up with Ollie. I saw so many turns where there's a Byron and Ollie being picked, and you can just play so much more aggressive when you know you have those Byron heals coming on you. Byron also is a very broken, very easy to charge hypercharge, but also Jae did just recently get a hypercharge, so in all honesty, because of that, I do expect the gap between Jae and Byron to grow a little bit. But either way, these are both amazing synergy brawlers. Definitely recommend drafting them whenever you can. The second most picked brawler in LCQ is definitely the one that caught me the most off guard. It is actually going to be the Colonel Ruffs. Ruffs was actually picked in over 30% of games and banned about 8% of the time, so almost 40% with the pick and the ban rate combined. I would caution you that Ruffs is probably the brawler with the biggest fall off from competitive to casual ranked play, just because in competitive, your teammates know exactly what the strategy is. They know how to synergize around a dog comp. Whereas in my type of ranked games, it's going to be a little bit more hectic. Your teammates probably aren't going to be using your hypercharged treats to the maximum capacity. But anyway, kind of getting into the strategy for picking Ruffs, he is basically going to be used as either a wall breaker, and more often than that, going to be used as a hypercharged slave. So the strategy with Ruffs is you get one brawler that has a really broken hypercharge. My best examples of this are like Kenji, Ollie, Shade, Draco, those type of brawlers, maybe even Atara. But you basically just play Colonel Ruffs, you get that hypercharge treat, and then you give it to whichever teammate has the best hypercharge in your comp. They get that at the end of the game, and then you're able to make so many game-changing plays to be able to clutch up the game for your team just because you gave your teammate a free hypercharge. So because of that, the dog pairs incredibly well with any brawler that has a hypercharge that can be a win condition. And then also, like I said, he's probably the most meta wall breaker in the game. So because of that, if the other team has a lot of HP, you can easily pick a dog, charge up your treats for free, break the walls to make the other team a little bit less impactful, and then you will be getting your teammate a broken hyper by the end of the game. So that was probably the brawler that caught me the most off guard as far as his pick rate went. The third and fourth most picked brawlers were Ollie and Kaze, who we've kind of already talked about. So moving into number 5, we actually have Bonnie with about a 27% pick rate, but she is an absolute staple in Heist, and she has kind of become a staple in Knockout and Bounty as well. She's definitely usable in Hot Zone and Brawl Ball as well, but I feel like she is definitely at her strongest when she's either diving on that Heist safe or getting that hypercharge to make a game-winning play at the end of a Knockout or Bounty round. Her hypercharge is one of the easiest in the game to charge up as well. I think it takes like less than 8 shots to get a full hypercharge, and if you land that hyper on somebody, they are more or less dead. The stun is absolutely devastating. So that does it for our top 5 most picked brawlers in LCQ, but outside of that, there were a lot of other brawlers that I saw getting their shine, so I'll run down those real quick. Some of these brawlers that we saw make a big impact throughout multiple matches include Lumi, Gus, Hank, Crow, Charlie, Finks, Draco, Kenji, and Shade. The tankier brawlers on this list, like obviously the Draco, Kenji, Shade, they are mostly picked up for their game-breaking hypercharges. A lot of them have hypers that you're pretty much guaranteed to get throughout a game of cycling, and then once you do get that hypercharge, you're easily getting 1 kill, probably getting 2 kills, potentially getting 3 kills and winning the entire game for your team. And then the other brawlers on the list like Lumi, Gus, Crow, Charlie, Finks, Cordelius, those are mostly picked up to try to counter out some of these more broken hyper brawlers. Obviously, Gus has a shield that he can kind of defend himself with. Lumi has her super as well as her slowing star power. Crow's entire kit is kind of made to counter these broken brawlers. And then, like I said, Cordelius has got the realm to be able to trap them in there. So I feel like the meta is definitely very, very centered around broken hypercharges and doing your best to either support your teammates' broken hypercharges or countering the enemy's broken hypercharges. The last thing I want to say about brawler selections from LCQ is that the healer plus aggro combination is stronger than it has ever been in Brawl Stars before. I feel like at the 2-3 turn or the 4-5 turn, some of the most broken combinations I saw were those healer and tank comps. So like I said earlier, with Byron Ollie, Jae-Young Hank, Byron Buster, all that stuff is going to be incredibly difficult to counter, but some of the good brawlers I did find that were able to counter that more often than not. Obviously, Cordelius is going to be our top one there, but Crow is also very good. And then a little bit more of a sleeper tank counter, I've got the Otis as well. I feel like Otis is definitely a little bit underrated in the meta right now, especially in casual play. But even with these counters, the healer tank comps are still very, very strong. I definitely recommend testing it out if you have a teammate who's willing to draft with you at that 2-3 turn or 4-5 turn, like I said. But that's going to do it for our brawler selection, guys. Next, I wanted to go through each individual game mode and give you a couple of tips that I found from watching the LCQ matches there. The game mode that was my least favorite to watch and by far the most frustrating one to play right now was definitely gem grab. The competitive gem grab meta is completely based off of hypercharges and getting gem resets at the end of the game, which makes it very frustrating sometimes when the less deserving team ends up winning. I'm not gonna lie, it does make for some fun moments with crazy gem resets, but it is very frustrating to see one team hold control for the entire game and then just get absolutely wiped by a Kenji hypercharge and they end up losing in that manner. But at this point, every single pro player knows the vibes for gem grab, so a lot of the earlier picks are gonna be those broken hyper brawlers, especially Ollie and Kenji are the two that come to mind off rip. Draco and Tara are two other brawlers with that instant team wipe button that can be very strong for the end game in gem grab. Because of that as well, Ruffs is going to be very strong in the gem meta. Like I said, he's able to give his broken teammates those broken hypers and be able to make broken gem reset plays, so Ruffs is definitely strong, hyper brawlers are definitely strong, and then besides that, it's really just the tank counters like I was talking about with Cordelius, Crow, and Otis. Of course, Jay and Byron are also going to be in the mix here, but that's about all I have to cover with gem grab. It's really all about that last second reset. But moving into a game mode that's a little bit less infuriating to watch, we've got Brawl Ball, which was honestly a little bit crazy to see because these games were going so incredibly fast in LCQ. The amount of goals I saw getting scored in less than 10 seconds from the kickoff was actually insane to see, but because of the speed of which these games were played, I feel like a lot of the best brawlers in Brawl Ball were like movement brawlers, speed brawlers, like gadget stun type brawlers, and then obviously things with a lot of HP that can walk it in. I feel like this will be easier to explain if I just give you an example of a comp that like kind of feeds into what I'm saying here, but like if you have a Jae-Young, a Buster, and a Hank, and then you just start off by speeding up your teammates as the Jae-Young to get them into the middle of the map, you're able to use that HP that the tank has to offer, you're able to use that gadget that the Buster has to maybe secure 1 kill off rip, and then once you get 1 kill, there's really not much stopping a Jae team from being able to like walk it in completely. So I feel like catching your opponent lacking with these quick jump plays can be very, very important in Brawl Ball. The amount of games where one team just scored immediately, and then the ball re-racked, and the other team scored immediately, and then the ball re-racked, and the first team scored immediately was absolutely crazy, but you have to have these goal-scoring type brawlers. If you try to play 3 controls in Brawl Ball, you will just waste the entire game just shooting the opponents. You might get a good KD, but you're not going to get 2 goals, and that is just not what it's about anymore. Moving into Bounty and Knockout, I'm just going to cover these two together because I feel like, obviously, they always have been and probably always will be pretty similar as far as the meta goes. Stop me if you've heard this one before, guys, but the hypercharged brawlers, the broken hypercharged brawlers, are pretty much going to be the main thing that you're drafting around in Knockout and Bounty as well. It's very annoying, but that is the game that we've been dealt, so it's the game that we've got to play. The one thing I will say is that it's a lot harder to charge up a hypercharge in Knockout than it is in Bounty, since you obviously don't have the luxury of cycling deaths to get your supercharged up. So because of that fact, I feel like Shade and Kenji specifically are brawlers that are very good in Bounty, but not as much so in Knockout because you're not able to die like that. So probably going to leave those brawlers more in the Bounty category, whereas everything else I'm going to talk about can be played in both. I feel like a lot of the earlier picks in the draft were still those aggro brawlers, which definitely hurts as somebody who misses when Bounty and Knockout was all about snipers, but Kaze is a good early pick, Ollie is a good early pick, Kit is an insane early pick in Bounty and Knockout. Additionally, Kaze and Carl are especially good in Bounty because they're able to get that blue star pretty much for free. Like, obviously Mortis can do the same thing, but he's not as meta. It's all about the Kaze and the Carl if that's what you want to play. I would say for most Bounty and Knockout drafts, you want to make sure that you have 1 aggressive brawler, 1 assassin type brawler secured, and then besides that, you want to go a little bit more normal with the rest of your draft. And by normal, of course, I mean stuff like Jae, stuff like Byron. Unfortunately, the other type of meta brawlers aren't really like pure snipers like Piper and Mandy anymore. It's more like support type, tank counter type ranges like Gus, like RT, like Meg. So those are the other type of brawlers that you want to be filling in your comp with. Just to kind of give you a rundown, I feel like the ideal Bounty or Knockout comp is you have your 1 assassin aggro, whether that be Kaze, whether that be Kit or Ollie, and then you have like maybe a support range like a Byron, and then you have like a tank counter-ish type of range like an RT or a Gus. I feel like that's probably the method. That's what I would recommend drafting with. Last thing I'll say about Bounty and Knockout is I feel like the strategy for these game modes in competitive play is definitely very, very much based on the end game. You want to be making the final push in Bounty with all of your hypercharges in hand. You want to be waiting until the storm closes in a Knockout to use those hypercharges all at the end. I feel like a lot of these competitive games come down to the last 10 seconds, then you see all 6 people on the field pop their hypercharge at the same time. It can be very hectic, very hard to tell what's happening, but saving that utility for the end is usually a good idea. That's all I got for Bounty and Knockout though. Moving into one of my least favorite game modes, but I won't lie, it is fun to watch. We've got Heist. I would say Heist is pretty much just about as base racy as it's ever been. Even with the Heist shields, like, it does not really matter. It is still all about that safe damage or countering out brawlers that do that safe damage. The brawlers getting picked at the beginning of the draft pretty much all have one thing in common, and it's that they can absolutely shred the safe. Some of the things that come to mind are Kaze, Barry, Bull, Lily, Lumi, Carl, Melody, and Daryl as well. Those usually come a little bit later in the draft, but all of these guys, if left alone, can absolutely destroy a Heist safe all by themselves. So you either have to take a brawler like that, and if you don't want to take a brawler like that, then you pretty much have to run a tank counter brawler. I feel like Cord is by far the best example of this, but RT is pretty good. Otis and Crow are pretty solid as well if the Cordelius is already banned out. I didn't mention Chuck or the Miko when I talked about those good early picks. I will say that I feel like they have fallen off a little bit just because there's so many brawlers that can base race now. Like, you don't have to first pick a Chuck and just get fully countered out. So I would recommend playing with a little bit more caution rather than just like locking in that Chuck Miko first pick just for that guaranteed safe damage. There's a lot of brawlers with a lot of safe damage, and people are getting smarter about like playing RT and Cordelius into those aggros. So that's my words of advice for Heist, guys. Moving into our final game mode, we've got Hot Zone, which always has been and always will be about HP, support, and tank counters. Your classic broken hyper tanks are obviously going to be very broken in this game mode. Jay and Byron are obviously going to be your best synergy brawlers to pair up with those brawlers. 2 other brawlers that I feel like make a really strong use case in this game mode that aren't really great outside of it are going to be Lou and Finks. I feel like those were going off the board incredibly early in draft, and they're able to do a ton of work, especially Lou. I feel like this is the only game mode he's pretty much viable in, but he is incredibly broken once you can start cycling those supers. Same goes for Finks. And then some other brawlers that kind of fit that tank counter archetype, I would say, are B, Meg, and Crow. These are brawlers that are definitely a lot better in Hot Zone than anywhere else, but they're good in the high HP comps, and like I said, Hot Zone is all about sustainability. So you want to have high HP, you want to have heals coming in hot, and then if you're not going to run that high HP brawler or that healer yourself, then you need to make sure that you're going something with enough damage to counter the opponents. But guys, that's pretty much all I've got for the lessons learned from LCQ. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. video. It definitely took a lot more work to make this one than it does for my typical ranked uploads. So if you enjoyed me trying to give you a little bit more of an insight into some pro gameplay, definitely make sure you let me know in the comments. Definitely make sure you like and subscribe to the channel as well, guys. I would really appreciate that. I can try doing these type of videos more often. I do thoroughly enjoy watching competitive esports, so it is definitely very fun to be able to turn it into a video for my own channel. And I hope that maybe some of you guys who don't watch a whole lot of esports can maybe try getting into it. I feel like it's a really great place to learn how to become a better player, so I definitely would recommend getting at least a little bit invested into the esports scene, especially with Worlds coming up in November, guys. But anyway, that's all I've got for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate your time, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. But until next time, peace out.